Hello, everyone, and welcome to tonight's version of Literary Nights with Unsolicited Press. Before we get started, I want to remind everyone to like and follow and subscribe on YouTube. You can watch us on YouTube and on Instagram this evening. Just find the Unsolicited Press channel on YouTube and on Instagram, and then you'll see us live. Thank you so much for joining everyone who's out there. Tonight we have two fabulous writers joining us, Amy Shimshon-Santo and Kim Farrar. Amy is going to be reading creative nonfiction, and Kim is going to be reading poetry. So we're going to begin with Amy. As you know, we go by alphabetical order. So, Amy, thank you for joining us. Kim, thank you for joining us. And let's get started.
All right. So,
could you tell us about your book, Amy?
Yes, I'm hearing an echo, so I stopped because there was a little bit.
Oh, I'm not hearing the echo. Are you hearing an echo, Kim?
No.
Yeah.
Oh, that's so odd. All right, I'm going to just mute Kim just for a minute while you could talk in case there's an echo from there. Is that better? Is that better? No.
I'll try speaking, but what you'll hear is that no, actually, you're echoing back to me. It's something with your line.
Oh, I'm not hearing any echo at all. Maybe if we get moving for a while, maybe we could start with Kim then, just to switch it, because I'm not hearing an echo. Kim, are you ready to start? Are you okay?
Whatever you need to do.
All right. Because I'm not hearing an echo. And so I don't know, but maybe we'll switch it.
What's happening for me, just so you know, your voice is on a loop and it's kind of going around and around.
Oh, was it doing that before we were live?
No, only after.
Oh, that's very odd. I don't know what's causing that. I'm so sorry. But let's start with Kim so we can get the readings moving, and then we'll switch. So Kim, can you tell us about your book of poetry?
Okay, well, here it is. This is called The Impossible Physics of the Hummingbird. It's my first full-length collection. I have two chapbooks, and some of these poems were culled from those chapbooks. The book is really about, a lot of it's about, I don't want people to get the wrong idea. There's a lot of humor and it's funny, but a lot of it is also about grief. I lost my older brother in 2013 and we were very close and it was very sudden. And it was really kind of my first, I mean, I'd had grandparents pass away and things like that, but this was kind of my first real confrontation with that kind of thing. So a lot of the poems are about that. And a lot of the poems are, I'm like, I don't know how to explain it except that my poems, I deal with my own life. I mean, I just deal with my own stuff that comes along that moves me, what I'm feeling, what's happening, what I think is beautiful. And then I kind of explore like, why do I think that's beautiful? So my poems are, really personal. And that's just kind of the material that's just kind of where my material's always been. I'm also a collage artist. So that is like a really fun part of my brain that I like to exercise. And there are some pictures in the book because I thought, everybody loves illustrations. I mean, I just love a book with illustrations. So there's some of my pictures in the book as well. And, it only took me 40 years to write it. So it's all good. And that's about it.
Okay, let's hear some of your poetry.
All right. I have 6 things that I'm going to read, if that's okay, Rosalia, just to like dive in. So the first one I'm going to read is the title poem, from where the title of the book comes from. Okay, so I'm just going to dive in. Why it's hard to write about my brother. Because Rob called me numbnut and now no one does. Because in therapy I learned the word infantilize and stopped asking if he was all right. Because I'd rather recite his favorite paperbacks as a requiem. Dune, Slaughterhouse-Five, Silent Spring. Because he taught me how to give the finger when I was 6 and ran when I taught Mom. Because I listened outside the bathroom as he cursed Dad for buzz cutting his curly hair. Because he comforted my worry about his tetras, that his tetras were bored. They have no memory, numbnut. Each swim across the tank is a new ocean. And then I envied their easy forgetting. Because his longest relationship was with a club-footed lovebird he adored. Because he said I couldn't get good at Sudoku because he had to beat me at something. Because he could pinch open the beak of a baby robin and feed it pearls of milk. Because he once touched me and I let him. Because driving drunk and wrecking cars was a form of apology for being a disappointing son. Because I'd questioned the impossible physics of the hummingbird to spin the conversation away from our troubles. Because at 54, he could still bruise the same spot with a quick knuckle punch to my arm. Because we discussed the etymology of kerfuffle, but never mentioned emphysema. Because the last time he lit a Marlboro to rest, I bummed one and joined him. Because they zipped him into a midnight blue body bag and left without sirens. Because he drove me around the city with the windows down to point out all the cement he'd poured, the post office flagpole, Kroger's sidewalk. What he liked about the job was leaving something permanent. Because our last day together was at the aquarium watching the sharks swim overhead, nets of light reflecting on their underbellies. Because he'd withdraw for months, but I left him messages anyway, because he loved my dream of him. So that's the title one. And the next poem, I was a professor I taught for 35 years before I retired. And sometimes teaching is a really funny experience because I'd be standing in front of the class thinking, I'd say something and then I think, oh, the opposite is also true. But you can't say that as the professor, you know? So this is kind of about my experience a little bit with some of that. She-monster gets fired. Here you go again, running from the villagers with their torches and pitchforks. You thought you finally fit in. You filed down your neck bolts, got rid of your high waters. You watched Oprah, kept a dream diary, a gratitude journal, pictures of your thinner self on the fridge. You tried to keep your need for electricity minimized, licking the outlets, rubbing your hair with a balloon for just a crackle. It took years of practicing the right laugh. You did your best, married up, got a job teaching ESL. Now and then a grunt would slip, and crickets, crickets, crickets. Every morning, the affirmations, the meditation, the positive thinking. You longed for lightning and rain. You did everything right to escape the old ways of staring into the well. People liked you. You were funny. But one day you got caught eating flies in the faculty lounge. And soon the rumors started. You missed being the girl who loved her square head, touched her thick stitched scars like Braille. So you stopped hiding your green undertones with foundation. The villagers yell, kill her, kill the monster. You barrel through the woods, nettles whip your ankles as you soar over logs in your clodhoppers. You're filled with the old familiar joy, of being outcast and incredible. And the next poem is about my daughter who is autistic, and that's been a journey and a half, but she's incredible. So this poem is about her and to her, really. Powerful forces. Watching my autistic daughter stand at the ocean's edge, I imagine that words for her are sound clusters in primary colors. But today, I forget about trying to extract language, trying to hear her voice. The ocean fills the space where the trying goes. Such powerful forces, light, motion, moon pull, are no match for her stillness. I stand far enough behind to resist reaching for her elbow. She listens to the rhythms, absorbs the mist through her skin, as each wave reaches critical momentum, curling into itself. All day we hallucinate dolphins in the ocean's shimmy. The horizon makes me feel like I'm a ghost in her future. The sky is layered with shaded grays, yet the entire scene glows. My daughter's hair so gold, all I can think is, Lord, look how beautiful she is. Lord, let others love how she lifts her face to the wind. And the next one is called Meditation on George the Snail, the Last of His Species. And this was motivated or inspired by a New York Times article in 2019, written by this great science writer, Julia Jacobs. And, you know, I just thought about George being the last of his kind. So this is meditating on that idea. Meditation on George the Snail, the Last of His Species. The snail is my mascot. Moving slowly is my forte. Making the slightest progress is a way to keep going, right, George? You were one of the first things I could draw. I'm sorry to admit it, but as a kid, I tortured your cousin, the slug, in a jar with salt. I observed his membranes dry, his body wither like a raisin. After several days, I unscrewed the lid and shook him half dead back into the garden, as if that saved either of us from my sin. Tonight, my mother says I can't walk like I want to. Her back hunched, legs shining like plastic. We move down the walkway, taking the tiniest steps, a snail's pace. I practice going slower than my slowest. When she passes on, she will be the last of 10 siblings. We spent a day at Winton Woods watching the ducks and paddle boats, not saying much, our silence comfortable, not yet a sign of her being lost. George, I'll be still now. Linger with me a while. I take my time, George, because goodbye is never far. And this, I have two more to read. This one is again from my teaching days, and it's called Walking to LaGuardia Community College. There's a kooky intersection on Thompson Avenue where students and faculty, staff and security converge from slanted side streets. Each of us lost in our private thoughts, rehearsing the day ahead. A sudden wind blew us messy, whipped my hair into a frenzy. Everyone loosened, laughed more readily. A young woman just behind the line of my peripheral vision said, "There's a leaf in your hair," gently plucked it from my nest. The rhythm echoed from childhood, and also with you. I turned and her beauty stunned. Large amber eyes, radiant black skin, her sweet voice as she whispered, maybe it's good luck. And why not? No speck or notch on its golden waxy surface. Good luck to touch as she placed the leaf in the palm of my hand. Before the light changed, the traffic stopped, and we all crossed in orchestra. And the final poem I'm going to read is kind of an anthem. It's about making collages and what that experience is like for me. And it's called The Tao of Collage, after Joy Harjo. Clear a space for yourself. This includes time. No thinking, no ideas, no answers, no logic, no reasons. Stand against productivity. Don't be afraid to put the needs of others out of your mind. The light pre-dawn or evening works its private magic. This counts. Collect materials. Watch sidewalks for doll parts or rusted washers. Go to flea markets. Buy dusty, moldy, chipped, beaten, time-worn pieces. All junk is potential art. Don't forget the odd family scraps. You don't even know how you ended up with them. A banknote from Venezuela for 2,000 bolívares, or a moldy photograph with Turku, Finland written on the back. Let their hidden stories prance on without you. Indulge in setting up. Admire your tools: scissors, paper, water, glue. You can love simple things here. Do not tamp down your excitement. Your paintbrushes are a group, a chorus, all different heights and haircuts. They applaud you. Here there is no shame. You do not have to know anything. Your hands and eyes know everything. Begin. When you don't have a plan, the options are infinite and equal. Glenda's sparkling wand or Lana Turner's head. Make your choice. Glue it down. Bam. You've created a point in the universe. As you peruse your materials looking for that pterodactyl, you will often find something else. The perfect blue circle. Let it in. There are no mistakes. Things just turn out different. You are free to crack yourself up. Respect the messiness, the gluey edges, the crooked cut. Become lost. Nothing matches. That's it. Thank you.
Wonderful, wonderful poems. And Amy is next. Amy has written a book of creative nonfiction. I'm going to talk a little bit about her book, and then I am going to mute my mic so that it doesn't loop and she can read in peace. I don't know what's causing that loop. But anyway, her book is going to be born very soon. She could give us a date. I think it's next week sometime. It's called Piecework. And Amy, we're looking forward to you reading from your work and telling us more about your book and your stories. I'm going to mute now so you won't hear my voice.
Thank you so much. And thanks for showing the cover, and Kim, beautiful, beautiful work. So the cover, if you feel like putting that up again, I can tell a little story about it. It's the book is called Piecework: Ethnographies of Place. And this cover was made by a friend of mine, artist Sammy Savos. And we actually met because of one of the essays in the book. It's a compilation of things I've written over many years now. And one of them, one section is about heritage. And there are a bunch of essays on trying to find out, digging around, being an amateur historian, and learning more about my own personal heritage and migration stories in an immigrant family. One of the stories was about my great-great-great-grandfather Israel Dov Rosenbaum, who created a paper cut that's considered to be like the most notable example of Jewish paper cutting. And he did this not as thinking of himself as artist, he did it for his family. And one particular piece is in the essay, it aligns within the book, it's called Facing East. And the idea of the Mizrah was to show through an image where your family should look when they wake up and pray and orient themselves in the morning, no matter where they are in the world, no matter where they have had to go, to always know how to face home. And one young visual artist named Sammy Savos actually reached out to me, and she said she'd read the essay and she wanted to know if she could tattoo some of Dov Rosenbaum's animals, protective animals that are around the outside of the image, onto her body. And even though that's not religiously permitted, I said, of course, because she was really inspired by his work. And then when the book came out, I thought this would be so great to have Sammy do a paper cut. So this piece here is actually not generated initially digitally. It's a piece of paper that she designed and cut. And when we were brainstorming around the work, I said, maybe a tree, maybe a heart coming from the tree. And she said, and I see animals with instruments in the limbs. I said, that sounds fantastic. So then you'll see all of the animals prancing about. And I just wanted to give her a little love since she did such a great job on this. So I'll start with, so the exact opposite of my colleague here, this is mostly essays with a couple of poems sprinkled in, whereas hers were mostly poems with a couple of essays sprinkled in. I'll say that this work means something, I think, particularly at this time, when we're living through a period of intentional erasure, intentional removal of objects from museums, intentional closure of library spaces and library programming, intervention at the federal level with local and independent curatorial moves on what is a book, banning books, what is art, what should be in our archive. And so this is just kind of one little way that I've pushed myself, if I believe in people not being invisible, and I believe in everyone's voice being important for the creation of a social history, to hold myself accountable to that same idea by saying, you know, I too, like everyone else, has a story, and all of our stories weave together to create what is our times, you know, our social history. So this book has three major sections in it. The first one talks a whole bunch about arts education. And also, like my fellow author here, I taught for 30 plus years. And so the first part are a bunch of essays about doing community arts education work in schools. The second section is about community-based arts work and advocating for cultural spaces in our neighborhoods to expose people to all forms of local artworks and create local culture. And the last part is about heritage. And those are the pieces that I kind of am digging around, trying to figure out a little bit about my own born heritage, my family lineage. So I'll start with the first little poem, which is called Teachers Were Children Too. And it points back to my kindergarten experience and my early sense of how do you find an identity as a kid from an immigrant family in a place where you don't see much of your own culture around you, and we want to belong, but you also want to be yourself. I love fresh kinesthetic experiences. Swing and throw, hit and catch. Cheer our movements on. When I was a kid, girls did not get to do that in school. In kindergarten, my sister and I walked to the principal's office to ask for permission to wear pants. Pants are superior attire for a fabulous recess. Sitting on a bench to keep your dress tidy is grand theft larceny. Handball is better in pants. So are kickball, hopscotch, tetherball, and tops. Loop the cord around your middle finger, and a hard wooden object with a nail at the tip would be ready for battle. Playgrounds and classrooms are sites of small revolutions as we learn how to be and what is possible. In 3rd grade, Black is beautiful. Mom walks precincts to get out the vote. I bet a dime on an election and lose my hard-won savings, but learn a great lesson in politics. The best does not always win. We still must know the difference between crooked and trustworthy and do the right thing. Earthquake drills, we couched beneath tables, heads between our knees, but no one was prepared. No one prepared me to defend my desire to play. By the time Title IX passed, I'd picked the lock to the classroom and pleaded to switch schools. There were no sports in alternative school, but I would learn the necessary survival skills of muralism, adopting mice, embroidery, contact improvisation, theater, and how to make a bag from an old pair of pants. My father's dad visited California. He brought a basketball for my brother and a useless plastic Barbie with dyslexic feet for me. I felt crushed, furious, claustrophobic, heartbroken, and planning my escape. Thankfully, my pop let me trade it for a football. Street ball with my brothers was open hydrant fun and the heat wave of kidnap. As quarterback, I could throw an object far into space and we could score. By age 6, kids had dubbed me Tomboy Women's Libber. Call me what you will. I am asomatic. Movement is sublime, and I am one of those kinds of persons. So what follows is then I switched to a bunch of stories about being a teacher in an arts education classroom. I'm going to read a little bit from just the opening to an essay on my grandmother, one of my grandmothers from the heritage section, called "My Grandma Was a Radical." I've always wondered whether or not I belonged here. Could I call myself an American? What does American even mean? Who am I? You know, the easy stuff. Even if you believe in the idea of participatory democracy, history teaches us that it's not always easy to feel like you belong to America. Grandma Reva was a Jew in a Christian world. She was a woman in a man's world. She was a socialist in a capitalist world. She was an immigrant in a xenophobic world, a pianist in a world of attorneys. She was a librarian in an anti-intellectual world. She was a multilingual in an English-only world. She was a peace activist in a warring world. She lived through the pogroms, the Great Depression, the Holocaust, the Cold War, and more happily, the ascension of organized labor and the civil rights movement. She also lived through interrogation by the House Un-American Activities Committee, HUAC, and was followed for over a decade by FBI secret agents. She lost 2 homes, one during the Great Depression and another from being blacklisted, and the stress of being under surveillance aggravated her health. She birthed and raised 2 sons and experienced 2 marriages. The first to an immigrant Jew from a shtetl in the Austro-Hungarian Empire, and the second to an immigrant Gentile from Poland, a chemist who invented lemon pepper. She moved west, collected driftwood, and became a community organizer. She began her life falling into the Black Sea and ended it with her ashes sprinkled over the Pacific Ocean. Now, one of the interesting things about Grandma's story, when I started digging into it, is I just realized that it was a constant surprise. I found a letter to her from the W.E.B. Du Bois archive. I found Office of W.E.B. Du Bois addressed to her. I found a whole bunch of FBI documents that were charting the gender and ethnicity of local community members organizing to get people of color into office and work together against Jim Crow. And I realized that most of history is kind of this, it's kind of like an empty gap, you know, and I write, history is mostly empty spaces. My ancestors are a part of the emptiness. We're a part of that thick, dark matter that doesn't get written down and is easily forgotten. I wish I could read writing from women in my family tree. We weren't writers. Neither tradition nor society believed it was a good idea for us to write. They distinguished themselves in their own ways, though. My maternal grandma was known for her knedlach. She may have had a third grade education. My mom attended agriculture school, where she majored in beekeeping and animal husbandry. If I get one more bee sting, I will die, she used to say. Mom chose to express herself in imagery and became a visual artist. There are few traces of our existence on paper. Jews weren't allowed to attend school. My grandfather used to tell me. He was raised in a shtetl called Pitkamien in the Austro-Hungarian Empire. Boys went to the rabbi's house to study Torah, and girls were kept at home to do the chores. Lunch was a crust of bread, he said. You rubbed a clove of garlic on it for flavor. One day it occurred to me that I might have some handmade written down sentences in my family tree. I remembered Reva's testimony before the House Un-American Activity Committee. And I went into that, and that's what the whole essay kind of digs into. I'll read you a little bit from, I guess I'll just relax into this. There's another poem, a part of my family that was farther away. I should say I have like a all Jewish lineage, but when people in my family were escaping fascism, some of them came to the United States, some went to Canada, some went to Uruguay, and some went to Palestine. And my mother was born in Palestine, 1932, under the British Mandate. So we don't all see things the same way, as you can imagine. But I think the challenge of trying to hold family that's spread apart across the world has been really good for my brain. And it prepared me to be kind of a citizen in Los Angeles, which is an amazingly intercultural space. And then to have children and create family with someone else from South America who's African descended, and just to try to figure out how does our own lineage weave all into the human family in different ways. I think I'd like to end with actually the last part of the book is it's a pep talk for culture makers, I call it. And I think that's because I'm not trying to say that my stories matter more than anyone else's, but that if we don't write our stories, we're in a lot of trouble. We're in trouble because the master narratives don't really care about us. I think Yoko Ono is exactly right on when she says we have to work together to create a peace economy and to reject a war economy. So when we want to take a side, my side is a peace economy. My side is opening my mind to other people's stories and also being true to my own lineage and my experience and trying together to weave myself well into the human family with compassion and empathy and a clear commitment to justice and to life-giving rather than death and war. This last piece is called Pep Talk for Culture Makers. I end the book with a pep talk and a pitch on the power of storytelling. There are myriad ways to create change over time, and the stories of working together are ripe for the telling. Storytelling can create public memories of lives in action. Shaping public memory can inspire new improvisations and fresh approaches to living. I hope that you have read this book with the aim of repurposing and composting knowledge for your own ends. My life is one microscopic flash in galactic time. As long as this heart keeps thumping, I'll be culture making, one experience at a time. And I call that piecework. As a small elder, I've learned that the next generation is observing how we are with each other and how we treat ourselves, even when we believe no one is noticing. We are a river, I once said to my friend Akpa. We are a river, he echoed, and you are flowing into us. He made the sentence better. We are a river. We are flowing into each other. Being a river acknowledges our elders and ancestors poured into us and how we can pour into each other, flowing towards futures that deserve the very best from us now. During the pandemic, novelist and physicist Martin Egle-Wogbe asked me to give a pep talk for young writers in the Writers Project Ghana Moisa Mentorship Program, where I had been serving as a poetry mentor. As a mother and educator, I give informal pep talks all the time, but I never delivered one intentionally as a speech. Pep talks aim to convey courage and enthusiasm through motivating language. They must transmit epistemic confidence. It is challenging right now to convey confidence. We're witnessing suffering and abuses of power near and far. But we can be confident in our values, confident in the commitment to practice good character, confident that the rivers of change will keep flowing in unexpected ways. The best momentum for change is enthusiasm. My friend Margarita said, La revolución es el entusiasmo. After I delivered the pep talk, a vital conversation blossomed in the chat. A young writer named Ata Brown wrote, we have stories to tell and we can't sleep. Well, that's a fantastic reason to write. It's plenty. The chat conversation veered toward the challenges of making art and making a living. How will we make art and culture while living in the material world? The dilemma is a sticking point. We all must eat. We all need a place to live. I've had to labor in multiple ways. I've cleaned bathrooms, swept streets, soldered Velcro wallets, sold sandwiches, taught capoeira, choreographed dances, and been a professor. I've even left jobs that put my health at risk or compromised my integrity, even when I needed the money for our basic needs. Without romanticizing creativity, I've noticed that being an artist continues to restore my sense of value, wonder, and worth. I have always needed to make a living, but I've also needed to dance and to write. Maybe that's true for you too. In the chat, we writers theorize the emptiness of the stomach, the need to write, the demands of publishing, and the inevitability of our demise. Someone compared the discussion to a showmanship of gladiators fighting with wooden swords, who each went home in full skin. In our arguments, writers cited Plato, Hippocrates, Conan, Shakespeare, Bukowski, Solomon, Nietzsche, Darwin, the church, philology, nihilism, and idealism to defend their perspective on art and commerce. All in good fun. It was frolicking nerddom. When we cite people, we gather their ideas around us for support. We cite to include ourselves within the larger community of ideas. We blanket ourselves with other people. When I scrolled back through the chat, I noticed that not one woman, philosopher, educator, or thinker had been cited. The word woman was only mentioned as a body vessel for miscarriage or potential cancer. Prince was the only Black artist cited, and no writer from Latin America, Asia, or an indigenous group worldwide had been cited. Nobody's mother, auntie, or neighbor was invoked. The literature cited to gain authority in this chat were uniformly men and 99% white. And there was no white men among us. Not one. This is what a colonial education has done to us, has done to our play, our intellectuality, and our imaginations. And it has done this everywhere. Most people in the world have been written out of the archive, and as a result, el mundo no se conoce. The world doesn't even know itself. Certainly, we do not know each other on our own terms. Restoration, communication, and imagination are imperative for liberation of any kind. We can endeavor to write the wisdom and strategies of our people and places. We can write and read across genres, write and read in all of our languages, read and listen to worlds near and far. If we write our lives and read more broadly, maybe our stories will weave together a makeshift planetary consciousness and create cultures that reject erasure or denigration. In The Myth of Normal, physician Gabor Mate writes, this is a socio-political moment that is typified by the spread of negativity, distrust, hostility, and polarization. Something is amiss in our culture itself. Taking care of one's health is a start, but as Mate suggests, our concept of well-being must move from the individual to the global. I'm infatuated with the possibility of cultivating planetary consciousness. Everything from bees to trees are awake and share knowledge. Human consciousness is distinguished by the ability to time travel through our thoughts and share common intentions. Despite our qualia or uniqueness, we're all made of the same cosmic stardust. Lacking consciousness signifies ignorance, unkindness, or confusion. Unconsciousness means being asleep, comatose, or even dead. Humans turn to stories, whether spoken, written, sung, danced, stitched, or painted, to make sense of our lives, face our histories, and build futures. Imagine yourself in the storyteller's shoes, perhaps going someplace you've never been, then return home to yourself with a wider lens on what it means to be alive. Writing your stories is infinitely useful. If someone dies, you can write an obituary. Fall in love, you can write love letters. If someone is mistreated, write a complaint. If the mass media omits your news, blog about it. Not only can we write, but we can speak, edit, publish, teach, and encourage other people to write too. We can write essays and poems and books, curate events and teach and learn, run spaces and influence governance. We can use our creativity to make culture, make change, and make friends. Dear listener, I hope that you write so the world can read you. Imagine your words are weather. Imagine them rainmakers.
Hello, that is wonderful. Both of your work is wonderful. I hope the looping is done, has gotten over itself. So now it's time for our Q&A, and I want to talk about the hummingbird cover because Amy said that she liked hummingbird. So I'll put that cover up. Amy, did you want to say something about a
Well, I was
hummingbird? You
so
said you had a
excited,
story about
Kim,
a
to see
hummingbird.
the hummingbird cover, because in one of our parks in Los Angeles called Kenneth Hahn Park, there's a hummingbird garden, and I like to go there and sit among the birds. And I love that hummingbirds, well, they're just a design anomaly. They're just a brilliant form of design. And also that means beautiful. And also that means, I think they have to eat like 7 times their weight every day just to be able to fly, to move around the way they do. But I'm a real hummingbird fan.
And so, Kim, what brought you to that hummingbird cover?
Well, of course, the title of the book I had before the cover, right? But I mean, hummingbirds they defy physics, right? They can't figure out how they fly in relation with their body weight and their wings. So, and that's one of the reasons they also need to eat like constantly. Like they'll starve to death if they don't eat all the time. So that to me is like, things are like miracles in life, right? Hummingbirds shouldn't be able to fly, but they do. You survive catastrophe. You think you're never going to fly or get out of it, and you do. And so that's kind of, I sort of feel like that magic or faith or whatever you want to call it is a lot of what the book is about. Underneath, I mean, on the surface, it might be about a garden, or it might be about, but really underneath, it's about that sort of mystery, that sort of mysterious power.
Yeah, I want to talk about the poem about the brother that you miss. I thought that was really incredible that you talked about things that wouldn't happen anymore. No one else is going to call you numbnut. So can you talk about the genesis of that poem? Because I think people tend to not remember those other things. So were those, did you think no one's going to call me numbnut anymore, or no one's going to show me concrete? I mean, it's the little things.
I think, well, after writing for so long, especially poetry, you train in like the specifics, right? So I kind of have that kind of a head already. But this is the thing. It was very, very difficult to write about him in that kind of way. I could write about my own grief and things like that, but I couldn't really write about him. So I sat down and I said, I just decided to write a poem titled "Why It's So Hard to Write About My Brother," and that freed me, because then I was able to say, well, it's hard to write about him because of this and because of this and because of that. Excuse me. And so once I sort of hooked into that mode of writing, then things just flooded in, and that's how that poem transpired.
That's great.
Amy, very similarly, the poem about the story or the poem about your grandmother, it was almost a parallel. Your books are actually mirrors of each other, and the parallel with the thing about your grandma was really astounding, all the things that she did. So can you talk a little bit about how you came to that piece of work?
I mean, that particular piece of work I came to because I was sitting in a writing workshop when I was in school, and Robin Coste-Lewis was giving a lecture called Race and Erasure. And she passed around these poetry books that had been turned into other kinds of objects. And there was one book in particular called Street of Crocodiles from Poland that had been reworked into a new kind of erasure type of a structure of a poem, where there's literally, you open up the book and there's huge gaps in the book from a new author taking out parts and turning it into something else. And I just started weeping, and it was kind of embarrassing because I was in class. I did it quietly as possible. And then when everyone left, I like sat in the back of the class in the dark, in the shadows, and thought, oh my God, I don't come from a writing people. We weren't allowed to write. We weren't told your stories matter. Blah, 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 blah. And I was just thinking, how do I am I the first person in my family that's like writing stuff? And then I realized, I have the transcript. I might have the transcript of her interrogation. So it's like, they're not cute things. They're not formal literature, but I think that we do have written stories, or written artifacts. And I think it's also a good thing just to leave them around, because maybe it's just because where I am in my life cycle, and Kim may be in a similar place, but you start to see things in a longer time. It doesn't necessarily just be like, what did I do in my little life? It's like you start to see yourself as some kind of an outgrowth of what came before. You pushed as much as you could to open space. And then you hope if you have children, your own children, or your students, or your neighbors and friends, and loved ones that the next generation will be able to. And I'm not saying that life is a linear thing, because we're seeing that life is not. It's a circle, and we've circled back to what I believe is a dynamic of extreme, misguided, painful dynamic, which reminds me of what my grandmother went through during the Cold War. You know, no one should be made ashamed of, I believe that we have like anti-Semitism and Islamophobia kind of right up next to each other. And we have a person who's selling the biggest arms. I don't mean to sound too political. Nobody has to agree with me, but we have an arms seller wanting to get the prize for the Nobel Peace. So we have a lot of really quirky, weird uses of language. And I think it's a time where learning from the experiences of the past might help us figure out what's real and what's not, and how to navigate, and I think that there are stories that I'll never be able to tell. I'll just be able to tell my stories, but I get to read and hear everyone else's. So that's why I like teaching and I like mentoring, because it's about all of us. It's about all of us. And I do think that writing about family is particularly hard. I really relate to the idea of, I can't write about my brother. My sister died this year, and I found it very difficult to write about her. I did get out one poem called Coda for her. It's almost like the writing has happened in the formal space a lot of times, and the personal space of family and neighborhoods, and a lot of women's lives have been circling in those spaces. And those are spaces that are very complicated, because you have deep devotions and love, and also sometimes harm, also sometimes abuse of power. And, we don't want to throw anyone under the bus, but that's part of the human experience.
Well, also this year with Unsolicited Press, it's been the year of the woman, which has been very important because women have long been erased. Their contributions, which are very many, have long been erased from the narrative, which is told from the white male point of view, as you mentioned about your chat in your essay. Um, you know, and we're now just going back, finding the contributions that women have made and were erased. Like some of the male artists, their wives were actually better painters than they were.
That happened to an auntie of mine, my auntie Luchita Hurtado. Her husband, Lee Mulligan, when his archivist was going through his archive, he said, "Who are these works at the bottom, that are painted LH?" And she's like, "Oh, those are mine." And she was just doing them her whole life. And then she ended up actually becoming more well-known in a way than him, but that's not what matters. The point is they lived a creative life. But I think this is important for everyone, and also for young people, to not give up on to really understand how important it is to really keep the faith and to really do the work, and how important their particular stories are. To move away from this idea of, a handful of stars whose stories matter and nobody else matters. I think it's a time for everyone's stories. I don't know if we'll get out of this without that. How we'd get out of this without this. It's an extreme act of humility and love to listen to each other in that way. And the other part of the listening is the sharing story yourself.
So let's talk a little bit about how you taught, both of you. You were both teachers, professors, and writers. How did you balance teaching and writing, both of you? Maybe we'll start with Kim.
I think it was really hard. I mean, I'm just going to be honest about that, and I think, but I mean, I love writing like more than anything. It's so fulfilling and rewarding for me that I was driven to do it. And I know, Amy, you also have children, I think, and a family. So you and women, like, we're caregivers, right? So we take care of everything. Not only are we working and making money, because we got to make money. I mean, we have a lot of other pressures, and that's just a fact. But I think that for me, I would get up really early. I mean, if you want to know the nuts and bolts of it, I would get up.
Yeah,
really
I do.
early.
I mean, I think our viewers who come back and listen also want to know.
I would get up really early in the mornings, and I still get up at like 5 o'clock every morning while everybody's still asleep, because my head is so clear then. And I feel like I do my best work then. I sometimes work a little later in the day now that I'm retired, but when I was working I was off on Fridays because I was an adjunct professor. So I had Fridays. I would get up early in the morning on Saturdays and Sundays because everybody else slept in on those days, right? So I would get a good 2 or 3 hours in the mornings. And then it was just, you just pulled time where you could. And that was basically it. There was no magic. What about
Yeah.
you, Amy? How did you do it?
Oh my God. I mean, a few different, yes, I am a mom. Yes, I actually became a single mom at one point. And so working single mom, paying the bills, getting your kids to all their activities, going to they're in public school. It kind of helped me to have, by that time, I was able to move from my career in dance into teaching in the university. And that really helped me because as a professor, I had some flexibility. I could get up earlier in the morning, take them to school. I could work until 3. I could pick them up, take them to their stuff, do homework with them, put them to bed, and then I could do my work for the rest of the night. I just didn't sleep very much. It was very stressful. It definitely impacted my health, mental and physical health. But what happened is, I think for the beautiful and for the ugly, I'm sure, and I'll just focus on the beautiful now for the sake of good times. My kids saw that I needed to do things to restore my energy because I was so worn out. So I started doing meditation and Ashtanga yoga, and I felt irresponsible about it. But then my kids were like, wow, she comes back. She's so much nicer to be around. So they learned you got to do self-care. And so it wasn't selfish, actually. It was modeling. And one thing I love is, like, my son didn't used to think he likes school. He really loves learning now. Like, he's like, Mom, I'm really loving what I'm doing. He's back doing more study in fine art. But for a while, he was writing lyrics. So he became a lyricist. He became the DJ lyricist, spin master of his middle school. So we created a little recording space in the house where we live, and everyone would come through. And then my daughter started writing as well, also making films and stuff. Basically, our house became like this. Our home became a tinkering artist studio. I couldn't keep anything away from them. So I had to do it around them. So I put snacks on the table. They would do their homework. I would do my writing. And if I was doing more physical artistic stuff, because I was also dancer and performer, they would see that and they were into it now. And now all of us write, which is super cool. And that's the way it worked out. But it was slow growth, my people. Slow growth. If I said, and I write this in the opening chapter, no one ever said publish or perish. They basically said, you're a cog in the institutional wheel, and you can work as hard as you want until we don't want you anymore, right? And so I'm the one who said to myself, I am an educated person. I am a creative person. I want to write. I don't come from writers. I'm first generation going to school on my mother's side, a little different on my father's side. I am the one who has to challenge myself to do that. So it's that desire of, like, even if I only get up, if I can move forward 1 inch, that's going to be my inch, and someone else will build on that. And it was that kind of determination, a certain kind of stubbornness. That is why. Now, I'll say one other little thing about writing. Anytime there was a gap in employment or a gap in something tragic happened in life that was just a hard time, man, my journal was always there for me. So writing also kind of saved my life because it put the light back on my own brain, my heart, my mind, my body, and said, how are you, kid, when no one else was asking? So I encourage that. And as a teacher, I've seen how people have been like, oh my gosh, I have so much inside of me that I don't even tap into because no one ever asked me to do this for my job. Tap into your mystery. Tap into your, whatever's there. That's the greatest act of self-love in a way. I think we can coach each other. Go for it, do it. Like, we can be each other's cheerleaders, but you got to do it for yourself too. And it's not about any of the things people think. It's not about how many books you publish. It's not about if anyone notices you're doing it. It's about learning how to live as a free person in a world that may or may not, in an economic system that may or may not care. But I think that's not what we're here for. We're here to be fulfilled human beings, and creating is a part of that.
Very well said. And that relates directly to Kim's poem, The Monster, the one where the monster, talk about that poem a little bit. The person who flees, the woman it's the woman who gets noticed eating flies. I thought that was hilarious.
That's my favorite line in the poem. I almost can't read it because it kind of cracks me up. But well, that poem is a result of feeling like when I was a lot of my teaching career I really liked, but my last stint I felt a little bit like, very often I felt a little bit like a what is it, like a round peg in a square hole or whatever, square peg in a round hole. I didn't quite fit the mold. And I was in a position where I was not really encouraged. I was an adjunct, right? So I don't know if you've ever adjuncted, but you're not given a whole lot of respect. Like, you're not allowed to use the copier and that kind of stuff. And yeah, it was kind of, and I think that for most of my career, I was a very creative teacher. I used to like to make all of my own materials. I used to like to use literature that like turned me on, but I suddenly was in a situation where I had to teach to a test. I was in the remediation program, and I really had to, and it was very hard for me internally. I mean, I did what I needed to do, and I did my best for the students, I think, because this was a gate for them that they had to get through. So it's like, okay, I'm going to try my best to get you through this gate. But I had a lot of moral questions about what was going on that was supposed to be education, right? So I had some dilemmas in that regard. And that poem is about always feeling under threat, that I was going to get fired, or that somebody was going to bust me, that I was going to get busted for being like not completely on board, right? So I had this sort of sense of like paranoia a lot when I was there. I know it probably sounds crazy, but so anyway, that poem came out of that feeling of, my God, I'm trying so hard to be this like professor that they want me to be. And, I had to file down my neck bolts, and I had to like, change my pants, and I had to sort of put on this whole costume that's what I felt like. I don't know if they demanded that or not, but that's how I felt. And so that's where that poem came from.
That's a lovely poem, and I really love the last image of her running and to be free. I mean, because I think everyone can resonate with that, because we've all are forced to conform to certain elements, and then when you break out of that mold, you're like, oh, finally, I don't have to like hold my breath anymore.
Exactly.
So a lot of aspiring writers actually listen to this streamed readings. Do each of you have any last words? Like, what do you want to tell aspiring writers? Amy, you touched on it a little bit, but what do you want to tell people who are desiring to be writers? What is your best advice to them?
I mean, I think we have to live as if we were the leaders of our lives, that the most powerful, even though we don't feel powerful. Kim talked about filing down our neck bolts. I'm trying to imagine Frankenstein and oh my gosh. If we behaved as if our lives belonged to us, what would happen? That's what I want to know. We spend so much time now feeling powerless to get the job because the economy is not going so well, powerless to be one of the in crowd because we are, even in writing, working in a field that's structured around and elite and everybody else, instead of this kind of idea that all voices matter, and in that kind of a deep investment, because people, it fits into an economy, it fits into sales, versus what I am more of a fan of is this idea of making a culture that's a livable culture, so I would say, I spoke to a young person whose name I won't mention earlier this week. This person had just completed part of their lives and studies, and they were like, I don't have a job. I don't know what to do. What do I do next? And I'm like, first of all, you got to love yourself. Second of all, you have to be, create a space to not hide. Put your work out there on Substack. Create some visual presence for you. If you don't believe in social media, don't do social media, but do Substack, do a website, do something. So, and say who you are. You don't need someone else's approval. You don't need an award to be who you are. You were born to be who you are. Be who you are. Do what you want to do to the best of your capacity, in addition to all of the other responsibilities that you have. The next thing I would say is read like a demon. I love the public library. I do everything. I volunteer for the library. I take up projects for the library. I'm a fan of the public library. I always have a book queued up in my Libby app, or, sent through direct library to my local library, and just, bathe yourself in all the other literatures and languages. Start community spaces. I remember Sonia Sanchez saying, when she was starting African American Studies, she said they just did it at the house. She would invite friends over to the house in the living room, and they would read together and they would write together. So get inside a writing group. If you don't have a writing group, start a writing group. Read voraciously and intentionally. For me, writing now is about practicing how to live. It's not about fitting in to a system. It's about living before I die and living to the best of my ability as myself. And if you want to write, you can do it, but you have to really decide to have fun with it and just behave as if you have permission and go at it,
Very
and I
good
think it's all of
advice.
our to mentor each other too. We can coach each other, we can support each other, we can mentor each other. You never grow out of needing support or being able to give some kind of support.
Wonderful, wonderful advice. And Kim?
I think, my advice would be, if practice, that would be that's my advice. If you have 10 minutes, write down 2 lines. It doesn't, the quantity is not the thing, right? Just carve a little space for yourself. Do what you can, make it doable, and be just practice and enjoy the practice. Because that's what it's all about. And that would just be it. Take 10 minutes a day, 5 minutes a day, whatever, and put something down on paper.
Yeah.
Also very good advice. So I want to let everyone know that these books are available at where all good books are sold. You can also get them at Unsolicited Press if you want to get them straight from the publisher. I hope everyone will join us again on November 12th for our next streamed reading. I want to say very much thank you to Amy and Kim who joined us this evening. And also, I'd like to say thank you to all of us who joined. And it's good night for now, and see you in 2 weeks.
Thank
Good night.
you.
Thank you for
What a wonderful. It was wonderful. I'm always inspired every 2 weeks when I hear everyone's work. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Night.